My name is Victoria Winters. Night has come to Collinwood and brought with it no answer to the mystery of a man's disappearance. Instead, there is restlessness. A restlessness that draws me out of the great house and into the darkness around it. A restlessness that seems to gnaw at everyone who lives on the crest of Widow's Hill.
Friend or foe, advance and be recognized. Even the tutors are out tonight. Hello, Vicky.
Hi.
I thought this would be my own lonely, quiet little spot tonight. But we all share our possessions here on Widow's Hill. What brings you down here?
I just wanted to get some fresh air. The ocean certainly is rough.
It'll be a lot rougher if you fall. It's a long way down, Vicky.
That's just what I needed. A nice, cheerful talk.
This is the place.
Carolyn, do you come out here often? At night, I mean.
No. Only when I'm looking for something special.
Like what?
Ghosts.
Oh.
That's right, Vicky. Ghosts. They're all around us. Everywhere.
Back to talk about Dark Shadows, September 1966, getting through the first 70 episodes of the soap opera. Coming into this month, the show was improving for me. I don't know if it ended that way. Well, the last episode was good, but in general, the last half of the month was pretty boring. And, I watched a bit of a documentary. I didn't want to watch the whole thing since I have a lot of the show still to watch. But I was watching Dan Curtis talk about how the early days of Dark Shadows and how, he did build it up as suspense with some supernatural elements, but in the first 13 weeks, it didn't really come off that way. And I would agree with him. I could see why maybe the start of the soap opera wasn't the most popular, because it wasn't that outside of the box as the show later becomes. It was kind of just more of a crime drama soap opera that wasn't really anything new to television in the 60s.
Anyway, that's neither here nor there. What I want to know is, have you heard anything from Bill Malloy?
No, I have not.
You're not overly talkative on the telephone, so I thought I'd come over in person.
You're even more objectionable in person, aren't you? Are you going to leave, or shall I call the company guard?
Yes, why don't you call the guards? And we'll start a search for Bill Malloy.
Now, it's one thing for you to make threats and insinuations around Collinsport, but don't you dare come in here and tell me how to run my business.
Is searching for Malloy part of your business? Is he just another item in your books?
No. He's also a friend.
Not of yours.
What is it that you want?
I want to ask you some questions.
Why don't you ask Sam Evans?
I did.
But I did enjoy hearing Dan Curtis talk about how he had to convince ABC to give him another 13 weeks to get the ratings up, and how he was going to have to really start to push boundaries to the show. Unfortunately, we haven't quite got to that boundary pushing yet. So we will talk about September 1966, which was the last part of the first 13 weeks Dark Shadows was on the air, and trying to get ABC to keep it on the air since nobody was really watching. The ratings were pretty low. But we're coming off of August, where Bill Malloy disappeared, in quotation marks. And I did like the way we came into this month, where Bill Malloy's disappearance was the hot topic. I felt like they built the vibe to that very well in those first few episodes of the month of September. And we also got this legend about how there would be a third death off the cliff near Collinwood, and how there's a whole legend there that when there's a third death, things are really going to start ramping up here in Collinwood.
Maybe the widows can tell us where he's gone.
Oh, Carolyn, you don't believe in all that nonsense.
Maybe not. Maybe the trouble with me is that I don't know what I believe in anymore.
So we see Victoria, who sees the dead body at the bottom of the cliff in the water. She's with Carolyn, and she screams, of course. But they have Matthew go look for the body. Matthew lies and says it's just seaweed, but in reality it is a dead body that Matthew just pushed back into the water. It is a dead Bill Malloy.
Yes, Miss Stoddard.
Matthew, Carolyn and Miss Winters have just had a bad scare. They were standing on the ledge of Widow's Hill just now.
Why'd they be doing a darn fool thing like that?
It doesn't matter why they were there, but they looked down at the rocks and thought they saw a dead man.
A dead man?
They're both
Collinwood?
They're both terribly upset, and I know they won't be able to sleep unless we know for sure just what it was they saw.
I walked from one end of the property to the other and back again. There was nothing there.
But we saw it! We saw it! Didn't we, Vicky?
Yes, we did.
You don't suppose all those old wives' tales about ghosts aren't tales at all? That they're true? And no matter what my mother says, or Matthew, or Uncle Roger, no matter what anybody else says, what we saw out there tonight was the body of a dead man.
They say it was from that very spot the first Mrs. Collins jumped so long ago.
That's just a story, Matthew.
Maybe. There's another way of telling it. It could be she didn't jump of her own free will. She might have been drawn there by unnatural forces.
How long have you worked for me here at Collinwood?
About 18 years. Before that, I worked for your father on the boats.
And in those 18 years, I don't think you've ever told me a deliberate lie.
I never will.
When you were telling us what you saw last night, you chose your words very carefully. You said you walked from one end of the property to the other and back, and there was nothing there.
That's right.
On your return trip, there was nothing there. Was there something there when you first went down?
There was.
Was it what Carolyn and Miss Winters said it was?
There was a drowned man there.
Why didn't you tell me the truth?
I did. I pushed the body back into the water and watched the waves carry it back out to sea.
Did you recognize him?
It was Bill Malloy.
How could you do such a thing?
I thought it was for the best.
Did you think it was for the best to take the law into your own hands? You can't do it. Hello, operator. Give me the sheriff's office.
Well, what's so important that I leave my labors at the plant to hurry home?
The police want to question you.
That is the main story of the month, by far. There really wasn't a whole lot of other stories going on with the show, which is why I think I could see why the show had a hard time catching on at first. So the main story becomes Burke wanting to find out who killed Bill Malloy. He's convinced Bill Malloy was murdered by either Sam or Roger. They, of course, both deny it, but they agree they need to keep their stories straight because Burke getting to the truth wouldn't be good for them. Because Burke still believes that Roger lied all those 10 years ago when Burke went to prison for manslaughter. And we get a reveal where Burke tells Carolyn that Roger is the one who was really guilty of manslaughter.
What did happen, Sam?
Burke, this is nonsense.
Did he tell you that we were at a tavern? Roger Collins, his girlfriend, who later became his wife, and myself.
Yes.
What else did he tell you?
Burke, I don't see any point in this.
Did he tell you that we were all drunk, all three of us? And that we piled into my car with me behind the wheel?
Yes.
Well, go on. Well, go on, Vicky. I'm really curious.
He said that you were very drunk. That when you were driving back to town, you hit a man.
The car hit a man.
Yes. And you kept on driving and the man was killed.
And the police traced the car to me. And I was put on trial. And Roger Collins and his intended bride testified that I was driving the car. Isn't that how it happened, Sam?
Yes, that's what happened, Burke.
Oh, that's what Roger Collins said happened.
And the jury agreed.
Would do.
Did you really say that Uncle Roger was involved in Mr. Malloy's death?
I may have.
But how could he have been? And why? I just don't believe it.
I wish somebody would have felt this strongly about me 10 years ago.
Does it all go back to that accident?
Yes, it does.
But that was settled when the jury convicted you.
I thought the jury was wrong. So did Bill Malloy. That's why he was killed.
He was not murdered. He slipped and fell. I mean, I don't believe Uncle Roger would do
You don't
such a-
believe your dear uncle would allow an innocent man to go to prison for something your dear uncle was guilty of?
I know he wouldn't. Burke, you yourself said you don't remember. You said you were drunk at the time.
My sweet Carolyn, have you ever been drunk enough to... No. No, of course you haven't. Well, I was drunk enough to know very little of what was going on that night. But I do remember that I was not driving the car at the time.
And you think Uncle Roger...
Yes, I think he was driving.
What would that have to do with Mr. Malloy?
Somehow he found out. He was going to expose the whole thing. That's why he was killed.
No. No, I know you're wrong, Burke. Can't you just forget all about it? Uncle Roger couldn't... He wouldn't have done anything like that.
Well, I don't say that he did it out of malice of forethought. Maybe he went to see Mr. Malloy. Maybe they argued. Maybe there was a struggle and Malloy fell in the water and drowned. I don't know. But I think your Uncle Roger knows.
All right. I'll ask him.
You do that, Carolyn. Ask him.
I wish it didn't have to be this way.
This is the way it has to be.
So that's been built up more between this whole rivalry between Roger and Burke, where Burke believes Roger is the one that really committed that crime 10 years ago and then lied on the witness stand to get Burke put away for the murder. I do think this story, unfortunately, did become redundant, like I said, because by the end of the month, they're kind of having the same conversations over and over, which I mean is a staple of a soap opera. But the story is kind of strong enough for that, but also it's kind of the main story on the show and really the only story getting airtime this entire month, which I think hurt it for me, because coming into this month, like I said, I was very intrigued coming off of August. But towards the end of September, it was kind of redundant. Now, what they did build good was kind of the supernatural element of the show.
Well, I guess it'll just be one more ghost to add to our collection here.
Don't be so morbid.
Well, isn't that why ghosts haunt places? Because they're looking for something?
Carolyn, there's no such thing as a ghost.
You just wait until you've lived here a little bit longer. Then you'll change your... Did you hear that?
What?
I could have sworn I heard something.
This is silly. I'm going in there to find out just what it is. Who's in here? That's it. Yes, it is. But who did it? Well, it must have fallen off the table. I guess it couldn't have gotten all the way over here, though.
Vicky, please, let's go back upstairs. I feel a lot safer there. At least we can lock the door.
We also get a lot of David, the problem child, who I've talked about in past videos, how he's kind of seems to be connected to the supernatural elements of the show and how he believes in ghosts, how they're real. We get a lot of him telling Victoria this, Victoria kind of feeling like he's just trying to scare her.
I saw you and Carolyn come running up from Widow's Hill. It looked like something was chasing you.
Eat your breakfast, David.
Was something chasing you, Miss Winters?
Certainly not.
Then why were you running?
Because it was damp outside and we wanted to get back into the house.
That isn't why you screamed. Did you see a ghost?
David, I've told you there are no such things as ghosts.
Yes, there are. I've seen them.
Where?
Here at Collinwood.
So that leads me to what I began talking about in this video, and how Dan Curtis is talking about how after the first 13 weeks, he had to get ABC to give him another 13 weeks to try and get the ratings up. And he decided, well, if he only has 13 more weeks left on television with this show, he might as well push the boundaries. And we see, I believe the last week of September was the first week of the second 13-week contract, I guess, that ABC gave Dark Shadows to continue. And we see by the end of this first week, well, I'm getting tongue-tied because it's the last week of September, but it's the first week of this second 13 weeks of the show. By the last episode of the month, they really start to ramp up the supernatural. And we have David, who is going into the old house, the house behind the mansion. He keeps wanting to get in there, but Matthew, the basically gatekeeper for the Collin family, and who listens to everything Elizabeth wants him to do, basically, he's trying to get David to stay away from the old house and snooping around. But David talks to Victoria about it. They end up going to the old house, and they see a portrait of Josette Collins. And at the end of the episode, we see that there's basically a ghost coming out of the portrait of Josette Collins and walking around Collinwood.
If you're all finished here, I'll see you get home safely.
Well, I'd be quite happy to get home. Come on, David, we can come back here another day.
She wouldn't come here tonight anyway.
Why?
She doesn't like him.
So finally, the supernatural will start to be ramping up. The sucks that it was at the very end of the month. So my rating for Dark Shadows basically stayed around the same of what it's been. I think it's been a very solid C+ in these first few months of the show. And I think it's going to start getting better. I came into this month actually thinking this was going to be the highest rated month so far since I started doing this. But unfortunately, by the end of the month, it did become more redundant. And so I gave it a 77 once again. And that basically gives the average remaining at 77 overall for Dark Shadows up to this point, which is a lower end of a C+, but still a C+ nonetheless. So in summary for September, we're getting the death of Bill Malloy and all that aftermath, and if he was really murdered, and they set up that whole possibility of there being a legend about the third person dying on the cliff. And we get a lot of Burke trying to see if Roger and Sam really were the ones that murdered Bill Malloy. We finally find out that Roger may have been the one that actually committed manslaughter. Another story thread I forgot to talk about was Victoria visiting Maggie and Sam for dinner and finding this old painting that she felt closely resembled her. This was a portrait that Sam painted years and years ago. So they're still keeping the mystery alive of Victoria's past and what her past really means in Collinwood.
Maggie, did your father do all these paintings?
Every blessed one of them. He's pretty good, isn't he? You'd better say yes.
Well, I think he's wonderful.
Now I know we're going to be friends. There's a pile more over here. Why don't you look through them and I'll unpack these groceries.
Oh, let me help you.
Oh, no, and keep you from admiring my father's paintings? He'd kill me.
Maggie?
I'll be with you in a sec.
No, come now. This is important. Really important. Painting. Did your father do it?
I told you he painted everything in this house, including the walls, if you really want to know. Why?
Well, look at it. Take a good look.
That's an oldie. Oh, where did you ever find that? It's been here as long as I can remember.
In that stack over there. Maggie, I want you to look at it very carefully. And then look at me.
Well, what am I supposed to see?
Well, around the nose and mouth, don't you think it looks like me?
Yes, a little. As a matter of fact, it does. She could pass for your sister.
Do you know who she is?
No.
Where'd you ever find this?
In that stack over there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Not bad. Matter of fact, it's pretty good. Amazing how your brushstroke changes in 25 years.
Is that how old it is? 25 years.
Well, as far as I can recall, somewhere in the vicinity of, let's see. You know something, Miss Winters? She looks a bit like you. Or rather, you look a bit like her. Well, especially around the nose and the mouth.
That's why I want to know who she is.
25 years. Well, I know she was a local girl. Let's see. Hanson. No? Hanscom? No, Betty Hanscom. Oh, she was a lovely girl.
Do you know anything about her?
I knew a great deal about her in those days.
I heard that, Pop.
Oh, that was before I married your mother. Well, Miss Winters, I'm afraid this has no connection with you because, you see, Betty left town about 6 months after I painted this. And then I heard that she had died about 5 or 6 months later. So you see, you weren't even born then.
Well, does she have any family?
She had a mother and father, I believe, but they're both dead now. No other relatives. No, sorry.
So am I.
So after 3 months, I feel like they have a lot of story threads set up. They only focus on like one a month though, which I think hurts the entertainment level of the show overall. But I am excited for the next 2 months because I do think the supernatural elements of the show, which are of course the most intriguing elements of the show and what make it so different from other soap operas, will start to ramp up. Sweeps periods were around back in the 60s. I believe they started in the 50s. So I assume November was still a sweeps month way back then. So that's when soap operas used to try and give their best storylines because that's when all the advertisers were watching. So November should be interesting. We'll see if it really feels like a sweeps month. What did a sweeps month feel like in the 60s? Maybe we'll find out. But next up is October. October, Halloween. So I wonder what this show did around Halloween of 1966. Hopefully that will be intriguing. But I do feel like over the next few months, the rating has a strong possibility of finally going up again rather than kind of circling around 77 for me. That's where the average still remains for Dark Shadows.